All right, it's 6:05. So let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. I am super excited to have this is our first uh, San Francisco Bay Area Tableau user group in quite some time. It's unfortunate that it's virtual, but we're hoping we're going to get together soon. But this is a super exciting topic. Tableau just launched the Racial Equity Data Hub just a couple months ago, and we are the first TUG that is being allowed to showcase all the amazing data and some of the amazing work coming out of this initiative. And so I'm just going to really quickly start with just a brief welcome to our speakers and let them take it from here. So Michelle, if you could just flip up the next slide. Just first of all, a huge, there we go, that's the one. Just a huge thank you to each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy day. I know we spend so much time on the computer on Zoom, but when I just look at this slide, it's just such an amazing coming together of all these organizations, so many different companies and so many different people represented here, all working together to learn about this data and how we can use it in our organizations or within our communities to affect change. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I want to introduce our amazing speakers just very briefly. First off, we have Channing Nesbitt. He is from the Tableau Foundation and helps support the grant making cycle there. And he's also one of the co-leaders of the Racial Justice Data Initiative, and he leads the Racial Equity Data Hub. So he's going to tell us all about the data, how to access it, how to work with it, and how to become involved in the community. So I'm very excited to have him talk. And then next up, we have Michelle Huang from PolicyLink, and she's a researcher at the National Equity Atlas, and she is the mastermind behind a lot of the data munging and cleaning up and research, making this data available. And she worked together on the exciting rent dashboard that Tableau tweeted out today and was launched today. So we're really looking forward to having her walk through how she is using this data right now to make a difference. And last but not least, we have Chantilly Jaegernot, and she is a two-time Tableau Zen Master, so a big Tableau powerhouse. She's the VP of Data Viz and Training at Levelytics, which is a consulting firm based on the East Coast. So they're a great resource if you ever need assistance in Tableau training or Tableau dashboard design. She's quite stellar, as is her organization. So great resource if you ever need help from a consulting company. And she is also the founder and CEO of a nonprofit organization called Millennials and Data. And she worked together with PolicyLink to help build some of these dashboards that are featured on the Data Hub. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Channing. We are going to have a Q&A, so if you want to put something in the Q&A section, we will be following periodically. If it's appropriate, at the end of each speaker's section, we'll answer some of those Q&A questions, and then we'll leave the big Q&A for the end. So Channing, take it away. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And hi, everybody. Super excited to be here this evening with you all. I'm very grateful to be sharing this platform with Michelle and Chantilly because they are definitely the experts in this case. So I'm going to let them run with the meat of this presentation. I'm going to start off, though, by introducing a little bit of the context around the Racial Equity Data Hub, talking about the purpose behind why we decided to go forward with this launch, where it stemmed from, where it stands now currently, what we've been working on, and what's in our pipeline coming up in these next few weeks and ongoing months. I'll talk a little bit as well about how folks can get involved, folks can expect how involvement will run its course in terms of working with experts, working with specific visualizations and data sources. And then we'll talk about how we're continuing to build out this platform and community as we launched in a very growing stage and are super excited for how we anticipate this to look in the coming weeks and months, like I said before. And also throughout the period of time when I'm presenting and possibly throughout the rest of the presentation, I'm going to continue to put links into the chat box for you all to access at your own leisure. And we'll also follow up this presentation with an email that has the access to all the links as well. So this first one is just going to be to the homepage for the Racial Equity Data Hub as it currently stands. And I'll just jump right in and talk about the purpose behind it. And as you can see here, one of the first things I listed was our Tableau Foundation Racial Justice Data Initiative. And so I have had the pleasure of co-leading that initiative with a colleague of mine, Neil Myrick. And this initiative really stemmed from the untimely murders of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor last summer. Tableau Foundation, before I was fortunate enough to join that team, has been able to focus their grant making, their impact investments in an equity space. But once this happened, we got a chance to come back and resurface with one another. Neil and I spent a lot of time talking about how to approach this next phase of not only the Tableau Foundation, but also the beginning of this initiative, and focus really on the root causes of systemic racism across the board, and then specifically anti-Black racism for this initial grant making period. And this ended up turning into what became the Racial Justice Data Initiative, which is a $12 million investment upfront that will span over the course of 3 initial years, and focus across the focus areas of advancing justice, achieving equitable education, building economic power, and building political power. And so how this relates to the racial justice or the racial equity data hub, I know it can kind of get confusing, but they are 2 separate things that kind of work in tandem with one another. The racial equity data hub was a component that grew from a piece of the Racial Justice Data Initiative at large. And we first wanted to focus on data democratization. And what that means to us is not only increasing access to data, but it's also increasing access in a way that provides advocates, organizers, community-based organizations, grassroots organizations, and national organizations with data that allows them to perpetuate and tell stories that keeps the narrative in a way that keeps these individuals in these communities safe. Because once you are accessing data that pertains to race and equity, the people, you're not dealing with just data points, you're dealing with human beings who become vulnerable in that data. And so one of the biggest efforts within us democratizing data at large comes in the form of the Racial Equity Data Hub, with different barriers that we've set amongst ourselves, that we've set amongst our partners, and that we set amongst people who are going to be growing in this community, to really focus on how they can use this data in a way that is not going to bring any further harm to the communities that are at stake in this type of analysis. And so the data democratization component of the initiative is something that kind of was almost like the through line between each respective pillar, or what we call them, or our areas of focus. And it kind of connected everything together. And it also directly correlates to why we started to go forward with the Racial Equity Data Hub. That next bullet point that talks about capacity building at the community level. This is something, once we decided to go forward with the Racial Equity Data Hub, we wanted to make it be a tool and a platform that could provide the maximized usefulness for community-based organizations who don't normally have the resources, who don't normally have the capacity, and haven't historically had the expertise in actually like utilizing data in the way that could be most effective. And so we wanted to not only take data, make it easily inputable into Tableau, easily accessible for these organizations, but we wanted to bring it down to a community level or a census tract level, or think about like a zip code level base, so that they are able to not only get inspired by the visualizations they would see and actually be able to relate and see the process of what it takes to structure that data to get it down to that level of granularity. But we also wanted to make sure that the tangibility for them to be able to create their own form of analysis based on what they're seeing was easy enough for them to do at the level of granularity that would make it most effective. And so that obviously at this point is getting everything down to the specific community level. And what I'll go into is you can currently see on the dashboards that are on the Data Hub now, and that there's some screenshots that are going to be on the slides going forward. You'll see a lot of the dashboards as they currently sit, that they might sit at the national scope level. And what our goal is with the Data Hub, and what we plan to continue to do, is drive all of those visualizations and continue to have them evolve down to that level of granularity where they can trace down at the community level, the census tract level, or the zip code level, whatever it may be. I talked a little bit about those areas of focus, and that kind of directly correlates to how the idea of the Data Hub evolved once we decided to go forward with it. The areas of focus when we launched the Racial Justice Data Initiative had that hyper focus on the Black community and combating anti-Black racism for a specific reason. We felt that we wanted to, in order for us to drive the most impact that we could in this initial 3 years, we wanted to have the Black community prioritized, especially in light of everything that has historically gone on year after year. And how that kind of translated into the data hub is we really decided to broaden the doors a little bit and not necessarily have everything, every visualization, every data source, every blog post, every article that complements those assets, have that hyper focus. And while we still want to have that priority embedded within each piece of content that we end up featuring, we do want to make it known that this data hub is as at its inception, is definitely much more broad, is definitely welcoming all forms of analysis and all types of stories that pertain to the many demographics of folks who are continually facing injustice across those different areas of focus. So the only kind of tweak there that I would say is, instead of advancing Black justice, the data hub will focus on advancing equitable justice or equitable education, or building economic power more broadly, or political power more broadly. And Matt, I'll finish up with this slide by just saying our commitment has stayed the same. As you'll see on the next slide, the only thing that has changed is the broadening of the scope and kind of how we're thinking about incorporating a couple different features that'll come down the pike as we continue to develop the platform. Michelle, you can go to the next slide. And after I go through this slide, I will share a couple more links, but this is really a slide that talks about where we are now and then where we're going to be heading in the coming weeks and months. This is also something, I want to just read the first sentence of this quote right here. This is coming from our guiding principles document. We recognize the critical importance of data for racial equity and justice. However, we are not the experts in this work. And the sentiment behind that directly correlates with the logos that you're seeing on this slide. These are 4 of our premier partners that have really worked in tandem with us throughout this effort of getting the Data Hub launched and also contributing the initial assets to the Data Hub. You'll hear from Michelle from PolicyLink. You'll hear from Chantilly at Lovelytics, who has worked in tandem with both PolicyLink and USA Facts in getting a lot of what you currently might see on the hub in terms of dashboards. And they'll walk through their integral process with you all. And so I really want you all to understand that while my internal Data Hub team, our foundation team, we are going to be collaborating with these folks, with these different organizations and groups, we are always going to uplift both the data experts, the issue area experts, as well as the visualization experts. And that'll be really important for folks who want to get engaged in this effort to understand. Because we want your voices to be just as much a part of this as ours. We want this to be a community-built platform. A couple of the dashboards that you'll see today are really important to us and are really great examples of how the data is being used to enact change and to drive impact. Today, actually, we just went forward and published the rent, debt, and eviction risk dashboard coming from PolicyLink, which Chantilly worked on as well. And that is a really, there's a blog post that went out on the Tableau blog that complemented that. And if you're interested, I will send the link to you all in this chat here soon. We currently have also dashboards that are featured from USA Facts that pertain to policing. We have another one of our partners at the National Alliance to End Homelessness, who just shared a nationally scoped dashboard that focuses on the disparities in homelessness as it pertains to race. And that's an example of a dashboard that will also be work to getting down to that next level of granularity that focuses on the community level disparity. And a couple things to just keep in mind that are coming down the pike as future content. We are going to be sharing a couple different dashboards on the disparities and the implications that COVID-19 has brought on to different subsets of demographics across all 50 states. We're going to look at a dashboard that gets at vaccine distribution disparities as well. And that's a hyper-focus case that focuses on the disparities of the vaccine distributions in the state of Georgia. So that's a very hyper-focused use case about how folks are actually trying to advocate for increased vaccine distribution across that state. As well, one of the main things I want to call out for you all too, and this goes back to the idea of data democratization and how we want to do that in the right way. Probably at the end of May or the beginning of June, the Urban Institute will be publishing and highlighting a document and a guide. We're calling it the Do No Harm Guide. It'll be featured on the hub. It'll be featured on Urban Institute's website as well. And this is going to be a front-facing document for not only data analysts and people within the Tableau community, but also people at organizations, both small and large, people who are working in the racial justice space, to access this very extensive guide, I must say. But it provides you with checklists, examples of how visualizations have been used both correctly and incorrectly, examples of how you need to be able to communicate about your data that you're using and actually humanizing the data points within your analysis in your organizations. And this guide is going to be, like I said, very thorough. We're going to be having assets that help people kind of sift through this vast amount of information as well. But it's going to be something that we really want people who are going to contribute to the Data Hub, who are going to be a part of this community, to have a full understanding of the implications that they're actually jumping into when performing this analysis. So this Do No Harm guide is one of our definitely one of our more exciting features that we're going to be coming to you all with soon. I want to wrap up here quick because I know I'm taking a lot of time. I'll also be sending you all a link to our submission guidelines and content guidelines. And this really gets at the process for how we plan on growing this. I'll touch on this in the goals section here as well. The process of the submission guidelines and content guidelines are really for folks who are outside of our integral or our premier partnerships, such as the PolicyLinks and Urban Institutes. At this point now, what you'll see on the hub are dashboards that have been collaborated on between ourselves, experts like Chantilly, and then data experts like Michelle or other experts from PolicyLinks or the USA Facts or Urban Institutes. And they're very trusted partnerships in that sense. So we're able to kind of go through the vetting process pretty quickly, essentially to know when something is at the level of detail that we want it to be. But once we are able to really open the doors for folks who are in the Tableau community, for folks who are in the broader data community, we want them to also share ideas for visualizations, ideas for data sources that should be highlighted. And that's when the process of vetting and the process of getting the data into a place that is ready to be published on this platform, it'll take more time. And so these guidelines, both for submitting a project or submitting a data source and also providing context for the data that you are going to be using, these guidelines really walk you through what you can expect, how you can expect to be connected with an expert, and kind of the time frame that you can anticipate a project actually being given the approval and all the thumbs up from not only my team, but also our external advisory board that we have with us as well. And so that directly kind of gets at the way we expect our engagement to continue to flow from this point on. We want to, we are always sourcing stories. We're always sourcing different forms of data that folks are interested and think are very important to this space. And I will, again, be sharing links for you all for our forum and ways that you can reach out to myself and my team if you would like to be involved in that. And I'll answer any questions as well. And these other two goals, I'll just really hit on quickly. The granularity at the community level is one that I've talked about, and that's something we're going to continue to strive for. Training content is going to be like the next phase of the Data Hub that you all can expect to hear more about. Especially once that Do No Harm guide comes out, we are going to be publishing webinars and different and other forms of training assets that people can become familiar with and learn from and engage with, and as they continue to kind of familiarize yourself with what this community has to offer as well. And so this is all kind of different components that are growing as we speak, but we're super excited to share more with you all in the coming months. I'll pause there. I'll pass it to Michelle and Chantilly next, but I think there might be a couple questions if I can answer, and I'm going to also throw in a medley of links to you all if I can.
Yeah, so Channing, there was a question in regards to the public school retention rate data. Just wondering about the granularity of the data, why it was grouped into all grades when there's probably vast differences between elementary, middle, and high school. I know I have a child at Lowell, and that's been in the news lately, so that's certainly a hot topic right now in the Bay Area. So a little bit more information and potentially just where was the retention rate data coming from, and if it included private versus charter schools, and also if you don't know that right now off the top of your head, where people could find out more on the Data Hub, where they can find out the data sources and really or connect with someone that can provide them more information about why that data was aggregated the way it was, or the level of detail. And I know Equal Opportunity Schools is partnering in the Data Hub, and having done volunteer work with them, and just the level of granularity and their surveys of going into like student grit and determination. I mean, there's amazing data coming. So just any light you could shed on that would be wonderful.
Yeah, it's a little, some of that is a little bit into more detail that I can probably provide right now. I will say this, I'm assuming what you're referencing is the civil rights data collection visualization that Chantilly actually got a chance to work on with an expert of ours, a partner of mine, who comes from an organization called Civilytics, which is based on the East Coast. And my point person there, his name is Jared, and he's an expert in a lot of criminal justice data, education data. And so the conversation around that really stemmed from, we were talking to both Jared and our colleagues at USA Facts, and they identified the data source, the CRDC, or the Civil Rights Data collection, as being something that we definitely wanted to have highlighted on the data hub. And from there, we worked with Jared to talk about what the specific story would be as it pertains to retention rates and referrals to law enforcement in that case. And I'm glad that this is actually brought up as a question, because that is a prime example of a dashboard that, and Chantilly can attest to this, because I've been emailing back and forth with her and Jared this week about it a little bit. That's a prime example of a dashboard that, when we launched the Data Hub, it was initially featured at a national scope at a specific level of granularity that potentially didn't break off different subsets of that data into as much detail as you might want to find or expect to find. And they are currently actually drilling that down to the next layer of detail, which I want to say is going to be at the census tract, if not the community level or zip code level. The key thing, the question I won't be able to answer there in terms of how the choice to kind of bunch, whether it's charter schools or types of schools or grade level, I think that is just part of how the data is structured from the CRDC. I could be wrong there. I can definitely, if you are interested in finding out more, I will put my contact information into the chat at the end of this. I also have a slide that I'll get to after Michelle and Chantilly present as well. And then once I can directly connect you to Jared, and he answers all and every question that that people ask of him, that I ask of him. And even so, I might even be able to, we also provide the link to the data. It should be on the actual page itself, if not on the Tableau public page. And all in all, to be said, I can find the answer for the more direct answer for that question in terms of how the data is grouped and how specific pieces of that data has been structured as well.
Great, thank you so much. All right, off to Michelle.
Hi, thanks, Channing. Yeah, hi, folks. It's nice to meet you all, or cyberly. I'm excited to share with you the Atlas, the Bay Area Equity Atlas that Channing shared. So before we dive into the work that we do at the National and Bay Area Equity Atlas, I want to share our definition of equity, which is just and fair inclusion into a society where all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. COVID-19 and recent uprisings against police violence are all revealing just how critical it is for us to address inequities and to address structural racism head on. Based in Oakland, PolicyLink was founded 20 years ago as a National Research and Action Institute advancing racial and economic equity by lifting up local actions, because we believe that solutions to equity lies with the community and the people closest to the issues. And so the National Equity Atlas came together almost 10 years ago as a partnership between PolicyLink and the Equity Research Institute at the University of Southern California, in order to provide the field with data and to make the case that equity is both a moral and economic imperative. And our work involves around the atlases as a source of data and equity framing. We also produce custom research for community partners to advance their campaigns across the country, as well as signature analyses that make the case for equity and justice. And so the Bay Area Equity Atlas itself, which I'll focus on today, was released in 2019 in partnership with the San Francisco Foundation, based on this model of data, policy solutions, and research. This tool was developed to meet the needs of local leaders that need disaggregated data to advance equity campaigns. And what's unique about this atlas is that the indicators are deeply disaggregated by race, ethnicity, gender, income, ancestry, geography, and more, which are all critical elements in identifying inequities across the region. The atlas also includes drivers of inequity and equity-focused policy solutions. There are 21 indicators listed here, organized under people, place, and power, the framework of the San Francisco Foundation. And we also have an advisory committee that includes advocates from across the region who advises on our work. And so now I want to do a demo of the atlas. Here we go. So BayAreaEquityAtlas.org. A quick note before we get started, if you could please hold off on using the atlas or following along during the demo so we don't slow the site down. I don't think it'd be too much of a problem with 36 people, but just to be safe. So here is the atlas homepage where users can quickly orient themselves and find resources that are available on our tool, whether that is our custom data database or our research. And so the indicators section here is the main meat of the tool, where users can explore all 21 indicators available on the atlas, which are organized under these 3 sections that I talked about. We won't go through all of these indicators, but I will walk you through median earnings, which is an indicator we use in the Black Prosperity in the Bay Area dashboard on the Equity Data Hub that Channing shared. And so here is the main meat. This is the page for median earnings, and you can select the geography you want to look at. We have it for across counties, cities, and census designated places. And so let's look at the 9-county Bay Area region. And so most of the all the indicators have the same basic structure. We have a graphic display here. So here it shows that the median annual earning between 2000 and 2015. Most of the indicators have multiple options for visually breaking down the data in the breakdown section here. So for median earnings, we can look at this data as a trend by race, ethnicity, by race and gender, rankings of geographies, and as a map. Other indicators can be broken down by ancestry and nativity. So that's like US born versus immigrant. And that availability is dependent on the data source. And so for this one, let's look at the data broken down by race and gender, which is what we include in the dashboard on the hub. And so once you click down, it shows the data broken down by race and gender. There are filter options on each of these displays, and they're located over the chart here. And so in this case, we can filter the chart by year. And if you have further questions about what the indicator or chart means, you can click on this question mark here, which provides a definition of the indicator and links to our methodology and data sources page. A feature that I think is that this group will find really useful is our ability to download the data as an Excel file, as an image, or as a PowerPoint. And so Chantilly can speak more about this in the development of the dashboards, but this was how her team was able to download our data and use it in Tableau. You can also share it on social media or expand the view. So it's important for our users to understand what it is that they're looking at. So we have the what it shows shelf, which when you click on it will help users interpret what is being shown, as well as a why it matters shelf that shows how does this data relate to equity and why do we include it in this equity tool. And below the main data visualization, we have framings and examples that policymakers and advocates might need to be able to share this data and incorporate it into their work. This is something that sets the Atlas apart from other data sites, in that in this work, it's really important to not only show data, but to provide context. Like Channing said, we don't want for our data to do more harm than good. And it's really important to show what systemic barriers are in place that created racial disparities in these outcomes that we're seeing. So we have the insights and analysis section, which provides key insights that we gathered from looking at all the geographies for this indicator. We provide drivers of inequity. What are the barriers that might be in place that led to disparity in outcomes? We also outline policy strategies for addressing the issue, as well as an example of a strategy and action in the region that shows how can equitable policies be enacted, as well as stories of residents and people directly impacted, and some additional resources to other data sites. So in addition to this data tool, the Atlas team produces research and reports that dig deeper into inequities. For example, earlier in the pandemic, we published a profile of frontline workers describing the characteristics of essential workers in the 9-county Bay Area, which highlights actions that employers and policymakers can take to ensure the health and economic security of these workers. And these are other examples of reports that we've published. I won't go too much into those. But in order to widen the accessibility of our data and the power that this work can have for advocates and equity leaders, we are partnering with Tableau Foundation to create dashboards for the Equity Data Hub, focusing on Black prosperity, economic power, and justice. We are also working on the Equity Data Lab, similar name, but different, which will provide our data sets in Tableau ready formats to give users more capability to create visualizations for their work. And like Channing said, today we launched a rent debt dashboard based on our signature analysis of the number of renter households who are behind on rent, as well as how much rent debt is being held. And this could be broken down by states or metro areas, as well as counties. These dashboards were co-created with Lovelytics, and I will pass it to Chantilly to talk more about this development process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and share my screen. Alrighty, can you all see my screen?
Yep, you were all good.
Alrighty, thanks so much. So earlier, Channing gave us a brief intro to the homepage, and he provided the link for the Racial Equity Data Hub within the chat. I just quickly want to show you all how you can navigate the Racial Equity Data Hub, how you can find some of the visualizations, and then talk about the work that PolicyLink and Lovelytics has done, as well as Tableau Foundation, what we've done over the past couple of months in order to prepare this data, visualize this data, and then publish this, this information to the Equity Data Hub. So once you go to the homepage and you scroll down, you'll start to see some of the featured content. As Michelle mentioned, the rent debt in America was launched today. So here you're able to just click on any of these links and further explore any of the content that we've recently launched. As you continue to scroll down, you'll start to see the core areas of focus on the Equity Data Hub. And what you can do here is you can start to dive into each one of these areas. So if I want to explore more data about achieving equitable education, I can go ahead and click that link. And from there, I'm going to get some information about the role of data, why it matters, and then some of the visualizations that have already been created. And soon what we're going to do is provide more data sets that you all can explore within the community as well. So here, I'm going to then navigate to the Explore the Data tab here so that we can focus on the Black Prosperity in America dashboard that I work hand in hand with PolicyLink to create. Once you navigate to this page, you're then able to have a look at the dashboard here. It's embedded within the site, and you're able to navigate throughout the dashboard and learn more about the information that's being provided to you. And I'll actually dive more into this on Tableau desktop, but just know that directly from the site, you're able to go ahead and navigate to different tabs, learn more about the information on each of the tabs. You're also able to download the workbooks as well. So if you select download, you can download the workbook directly. You can also download an image. You can download a PDF if you like, or a PowerPoint and feature this work as well. And for every dashboard that's published on the Equity Data Hub, what you'll see here is that there's information about the data, the historical context, the visualization itself, the current implications, and then some of the key takeaways that we wanted to provide the community with as they are looking and diving into this visualization. So now I'll navigate to Tableau. So how do we get this data ready for Tableau? So as Michelle mentioned, on the Atlas, you're able to navigate to each of the sites or each of the indicators, and you're able to download the data. The data is in a format that is actually readily available for Tableau. Each indicator comes in as its own data set. So for this visualization, we had to compile various data sets in order to tell this story to our end users. So here we have about 10 different data sets that we're using on the various tabs in order to bring all of this together. But do note that when you are going from the Atlas and downloading the data for the indicator and bringing that into Tableau, that data is in a very consumable format for you to be able to start to analyze it within Tableau. Just so you can see, if I go to one of these tabs, there wasn't much work that we had to do on our end, but in terms of cleaning up that data, but there was a lot of knowledge transfer that Michelle and I had to do over the past couple of months so that I could familiarize myself with what each of the fields mean as well. So here's all of the data that we have available to us specifically for this chart. We're looking at the higher education indicator. And going back to the dashboard, what you'll see here is that just like on the Atlas, you have the ability to drill into any geography type. So you have the nation, the state, the metro. So when we're on the nation, obviously that's the United States, but when we go ahead and we navigate to a particular state, we can focus on whichever state that we like. So I'm currently based out of Maryland, so I went ahead and selected Maryland. In this particular view, there were two things that we wanted the user to be able to do. We wanted them to be able to compare the percent of population from the ages of 25 to 64 with a BA or higher, broken out by both year as well as race and ethnicity. But we wanted to provide them with two ways of viewing that data. So here we're breaking it out by each of the years. And then we have a circle that represents each of the race/ethnicities with a focus on the Black population here, because that's what the entire workbook is focused on, Black prosperity in America. But then if you were to select race ethnicity, we're now transforming that view a little bit so that you can group each of these sections by the race ethnicities and see the progress over time in terms of, you can see the progress over time in terms of the percentage of that population for that particular race/ethnicity. Not all views you're able to change like that, but this is a pretty neat one that we were able to use a sheet swap for within Tableau. So then if I were to navigate to let me go ahead and go into a larger view, navigate to the wages tab, we then have another chart type that kind of explains the same information. Here we're highlighting the median wages by race, and we're also highlighting the wage gap as well between each of these. And what you'll also find on each of the Tableau dashboards is that you're able to go to the methodology itself, as Michelle was explaining, and learn more about it. So if there was something that you saw on the Tableau dashboard that you wanted to learn more about, you're able to click on it directly from each of the tabs and learn more about it specifically by selecting here. So each tab allows you to dive into a particular geography. You're able to go into a metro city. You're able to find a particular, like focus on one city. You're able to look at the entire nation. And then you're also able to look at various indicators and various ways of looking at this data. So next, I'll go ahead and show you all the rent depth dashboard, which was just published today.
Chantilly, before you jump into the rent debt dashboard, I have a question that either you or Michelle might be able to answer more readily. And this question says, where is it? Sorry. Does the Bay Area Equity Atlas rely on ACS data? Are you exclusively using 1-year ACS data for the counties or also using 5-year data? Just curious because of sample sizes and cherry picking.
Yeah, I can answer that. We use the 5-year microdata from the ACS, and yeah, we in order to we have a threshold of setting 100 survey participants in order to include the data in our indicators. So what that means is that with the microdata, we're looking at individual responses from the American Community Survey, and for each group by race, by gender, we would only report it for that group if the underlying universe is over 100 participants. But we also use other data outside of the US Census, especially because the Bay Area Equity Atlas is a local tool. We use a lot of local resources. We also do one indicator, the diversity of electeds, that is primary data collection that we collect on in-house. So that's the unique indicator that we have. But other than that, we use publicly available sources.
Thanks for answering that. I don't think there's any more questions at this time. So Chantilly, you can continue.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Shannon. Thank you as well, Michelle. Alrighty, so taking a deeper look at the Rent Debt in America dashboard, I went ahead and went back to the Equity Data Hub so that you all can see exactly how to download that workbook once again. So this dashboard in particular focuses on really who's behind on rent, especially during the recovery of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I would say the team and I spent the past couple of weeks, really past couple of months, working on these dashboards, compiling this data and bringing it into Tableau. I'll navigate back to the dashboard so that I can talk about some of the features of this, which is a little bit different from the other one. So this data set is actually a live data set that's connected to a Google Sheet that the PolicyLink team updates on a regular basis. So even though it says we're using an extract right now, this extract is actually a live connection, or actually a connection to Google Sheet. And when we publish this to Tableau public, this data is updated on a frequent basis. It's able to automatically update and populate the latest results within this dashboard without the team having to download it, refresh it, and then republish it. So I'll just put that out there as well. So there are two main dashboards that are in this particular view. You have your overall dashboard view, which provides you with information about renter households that are behind on rent and the percentage. Right now, we're looking at the overall United States, but just like all of the other dashboards, you're able to select a particular geography. In this instance, you can select either the entire nation, you can look at a particular state, or you can look at a metropolitan area. So just focusing on the US right now, we have the three main numbers at the top: the overall households behind on rent, the estimated total rent debt of those households, and then the estimated rent debt per household. We also have characteristics of the renters. So we have the percentage of the people of color, we have the percentage for low income, unemployed, and lost employment income. And then down below, we have renters relying on income, debt, and family and friends to pay for expenses. And you can see that breakout between behind versus the paid rent. And then we also have a breakout of the renter households that were rent burdened and economically insecure in 2019. And we have that broken out by ethnicity. So with this dashboard, as I mentioned, you're able to go through each of the geographies. I'll select Maryland once again, because that's where I'm located. And you can start to, ask and answer some questions about a particular geography that you're focused on. When you select a geography, we have it built in so that you're able to compare whatever, whether you're selected on like a state or a metropolitan area, you're able to compare that to the national level, which is the gray line. So whatever state you have selected, that is represented here as well. So now another view that we have built into this particular version is the county map. So if I go ahead and select the county map, this view allows you to select a state and look at the counties look at the information by county based on a particular metric. So if I go to, I'll stick with Maryland for right now, or we can actually do like California. What you'll see here is that right now we're looking at the estimated rent debt per household. For California, we have all of the zip codes with the darker shading being the higher estimated rent debt per household. We can then go ahead and click on any of these other metrics, and the shading of the entire map will change. So if we want to look at households behind on rent, we're able to distinguish between those two as well. And if you're not familiar with, how to navigate and look at a map, what we have on the right-hand side is just a breakout or a ranking of each of the counties within California. So you can see, if we go back to the estimated rent debt per household, you're able to see which counties rank at the top and which ones rank at the bottom. So if you scroll here, you're able to see that, and you can click on any of these counties as well and highlight that on the map. Also, if I go to Georgia, because I was raised in Georgia, and I would say that when I was looking at this data, I did go to Georgia and actually search for the county that I was raised in. So if I selected Richmond, so I was raised in Richmond County of Augusta, Georgia, I was able to look at Richmond County and highlight it specifically and just learn more about kind of where I'm from. With that, Michelle, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. That was so great. I feel like I even learned things that I didn't know. So thank you. So all of this goes to show how we have leveraged disaggregated data to make a powerful case for equity. Much of our research and work are done in partnership with community leaders and advocates who are on the ground campaigning for equitable policies. So last summer, the National Equity Atlas began producing a series of fact sheets to support the work across the region to advance policies that protect renters at risk of eviction during the COVID-19 emergency. And in July 2020, Raise the Roof Coalition used our analysis to make the case to the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors, the magnitude of potential evictions if the eviction moratorium was allowed to expire that month. And through a unanimous vote, the County Board of Supervisors extended the county's eviction moratorium through September of last year and enacted a freeze on rent increases. Another example is that in February, we participated in the Contra Costa Budget Justice Coalition's presentation to the County Board of Supervisors. And so it shows that the Contra Costa County has the most households that are behind on their water bills of all counties in the region. About 31,000 households have water debt. And this presentation prompted local officials to begin plans to allocate aid to households with water debt. And all of these analyses lay the foundations for us to create the rent debt dashboard, which, like Chantilly explained, uses Tableau to expand access to our research. And so there are many ways that data visualization support the work of equity leaders and advance equitable policy campaigns. And this is where you come in. The National Equity Atlas team is just beginning to build out our capability to leverage Tableau, and welcome the support from Tableau users such as yourselves in helping us think through and develop these products. There are also opportunities for you to utilize our data to create your own visualizations, which can be featured on the Equity Data Lab once that is launched in early May. So with that, I'll pass to Channing to talk more about how this aligns with the Equity Data Hub and how users can get involved.
Yeah, thanks so much, Michelle, and thanks so much, Chantilly, for the detailed demos there and kind of the walkthrough of your process and the work that you all are doing. Before I get into our call to action from the Data Hub's perspective, just to paint context for you all around the partnership with PolicyLink, like that's a prime example of, with my Tableau Foundation hat on right now, that is the prime example of a partnership that we're super excited about and one that we consider very premier. For the work they're doing on an advocacy level, from the work they're doing on a policy level, and how they're planning to incorporate and increase their use of data to do so. So that being said, like when PolicyLink came to us and we're talking about the intricacies of the Racial Equity Data Hub and the intricacies of their soon to be launched Racial Equity Data Lab, these are kind of what you're seeing is the final product of months of work of determining what a story that is identified that both PolicyLink and we felt should be told. It's the final product of a vetting process of a very hours and hours of work that Chantilly has to work to not only understand how to paint the story in the form of a visualization, but also, like she was saying, learn a lot about the process of structuring that data in a way that allows for more democratization to follow after it is published out to the community as well. So that's all to be said, that we are super enthusiastic about the partnership with PolicyLink, and it is an example of one that is going to continue to grow, and you'll see over time more and more visualizations shared on both the Data Hub from Tableau's perspective and also featured on their forthcoming Data Lab as well. So like Michelle was saying, you're able to help us grow this community in the ways that we kind of see fit. And I want to just call out our call to action, and I'm going to be posting into the chat again. I'll post my Racial Equity Data Hub team's email alias, where you can get in touch with us and raise your hand as an expert or an interested contributor in the form of lending dashboard expertise. If you want to lend your expertise the way Chantilly has lended hers to help paint some of these stories and illustrate them in the form of data visualization. We're also going to be welcoming those who are just interested in sharing specific data sources that they feel are beneficial to this cause and to this space, in order to drive impact, in order to shed light on stories that may or may not had adequate light shed on them, or may not have corresponding visualizations that are as useful and are as clean and pristine as the ones you're seeing here. And then we always are welcoming continued issue area experts who one thing I do periodically is I get on the phone with partners or get on Zoom calls with partners and just talk about what are things that they think are important and what are things that we should be aware of. We're looking at really getting and diving into, like I said, the disparities in COVID vaccine distribution. We're looking at incorporating with our partners at Feeding America a very, very in-depth, extensive dashboard as it pertains to food insecurity and how different demographic groups are implicated more so and disproportionately implicated throughout the pandemic, but also historically as well. And as we continue to develop the Data Hub, and as PolicyLink continues to develop the Racial Equity Data Lab, the more experts in this community that we can connect people with, the more in-depth and really holistic stories can be told and highlighted in the form of visualizations and articles as well. I want to make one more call out to our community forum. So like I said, I'm going to paste our email alias into the chat here momentarily. I'll also paste a link to the community forum, which is a part of the Racial Equity Data Hub. This is a growing forum where we're continuing to post updates when dashboards are shared, when blog posts are shared, when articles are shared, when future training content is shared. It's a place where we want people to ask questions, where we want people to call out different revisions that they see might need to be had. We know we're not perfect, and even though we're putting in numerous hours and working with Chantilly and working with folks at Lovelytics and other trusted partners as well, there's going to be things that we still miss here and there. There's going to be things that may or may not need to be corrected. And that's the perfect place for folks to call out like, oh, I think I see a little error on a specific dashboard as it pertains to Black prosperity in the Bay Area. Can you go ahead and work with someone to make those adjustments? And this is where we want those conversations to happen. This is where we want that community to be built. This is also another place where if you don't feel comfortable reaching directly out to our email alias or myself, respectively, you can just feel free to join our community forum, raise your hand there, and we will get you kind of teed up through that process as well. The one final thing, Anya, before I pass it back to you, as Chantilly was showing you how the dashboards sit on the Racial Equity Data Hub, she highlighted the section at the bottom of those dashboards that kind of go into the context of the data. They talk about the historical implications, the nuances, the key takeaways that you can expect when analyzing that data. That ties directly to those submission and content guidelines that I referenced earlier, and that I'll make sure that you all get in the email after this. Those are kind of front-facing questions that we ask of any contributor who is sharing a data source and who is wanting to contribute a visualization to provide that information. And that is where the vetting process comes in. That's where we use our external advisory board to check and make sure that it is not only data that is well structured and clean, but also de-weaponized and will not perpetuate any false narrative or any harmful narrative. So that's the final call out I'll make there. I will pass it back to Anya and I will answer any question. I also will paste these links in here pretty quickly.
Yay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Channing and Michelle and Chantilly. That was an amazing presentation. And I can only emphasize how amazing it is to get involved and support initiatives of the Tableau Foundation. While I've not been personally involved in this specific initiative, I have volunteered on the past for other Tableau Foundation projects, and it's a great opportunity to get outside the wheelhouse of what your work kind of constructs you to, right? You often have different deliverables, different clients, and they have their agendas, but when you volunteer, you have this opportunity to explore and just test your skills and experience new things and explore new data sets. And it's definitely the most rewarding work that you can do. It's really spectacular. There is someone in the chat, Jay Bain has raised their hand. If you could type your question in the chat, that would be awesome. So I hope that we can get to it. And then another exciting thing, we have the ability to give out a free e-learning license for all the Tableau stuff. And so I did a random generator on the participants. And so if Jennifer Dang is in the house, if you can just chat privately to me or email, you have just won, woo, a free e-learning license. So that's super exciting. And if Jennifer doesn't claim it, then in like the next minute or so, we might have to re-randomize it. Jennifer. Oh, yes, she did. She's on it. But yes, please, if you have any questions about the Data Hub, please reach out to Channing. If you'd love to get involved in the Equity Atlas, please reach out to Michelle. And Michelle, have you put your email in there? Just such a great way to get involved, particularly in the Bay Area. Oh, someone else has popped up on chat. I just want to make sure we're answering everyone's questions. Yeah, Jennifer. All right, Jennifer, here, I'll email you separately. But everyone else, thank you so much to our presenters, Channing, Michelle, and Chantilly. Again, Chantilly, Levelitics, amazing organization. If you ever need help with Tableau, she is a spectacular trainer. And just an amazing resource in how to get up and running. PolicyLink, and I'm sure Channing, if you go to the Data Hub, there's so many amazing organizations you can support. I know just having done work for equal opportunity schools, like there's what you get back from volunteering and the information and the connections that you make to your community, especially here in the Bay Area. We have so much going on right now. It's just priceless. So thank you so much for blessing us with this data and these opportunities. And we really look forward to seeing how this data is utilized to help make our community a better place.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thank you. And Michelle and Chantilly, again, thank you guys both for kind of walking through that today. That was super cool for me to see as well. So very grateful for that.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
I do see 2 hands raised still. Is that?
Oh, Let's see, okay, so there was Jay. Jay, can you pop your question in the Q&A, please? Jay Bain.
There might have been one more as well too.
I don't know.
Also, Anya just had like EOS is actually getting ready to contribute a really cool dashboard as well too. So that's something you might be excited to see fruition as well. So very excited about that.
Ooh. Nice. Jay, please post your question. We really want to answer your question. Put it in the QA. Oh. All right. We'll give him what, Jay? 1 more minute to type, and then we all have children to feed and stop ignoring. And everyone, this will be posted on YouTube, and we will email out all the links that Channing put in the QA, so you will have access to all of these links at the end of it all. All right. Well, if we didn't answer your question now, or you just didn't have time to type it in the QA, please follow up with the emails. Michelle and Channing all put their emails in there, so hopefully you can answer your question offline. Thank you so much, and we look forward to future San Francisco tugs. We had a lot of people as they registered indicate they were willing to talk at future presentations, so we'll be reaching out to you. And I think we have another tug plan coming up soon on accessibility and design. So I think that'll be our next SF tug. Thank you so much.